So Good Friday's text, no matter which gospel you're reading it from, has this moment in it, this moment where Jesus cries out, God, God, why have you forsaken me? In this moment of great darkness, this moment of great uncertainty. I think that sort of sense of darkness and dread and doom and uncertainty sort of pervades our society these days. It doesn't matter what political stripe you are. We know from polling, people are like, things are messed up and they just keep getting weirder. We know that there's this great anxiety, great fear, great worry about what the future holds. But I can't get over that question. The question that our devotional wanted us to look at is, my God, why have you forsaken me? I mean, it's one of those questions that sort of stands out. Because yesterday, if you were here for Monday, Thursday, you read about how he walked to the garden, fell on his knees, talked to his father, and said, take this cup from me. And had this argument with his father and basically says, okay, fine, if there's no other way to do this, I will do as you command. But that implies that Jesus either learned or already knew, or at least was pushing back at the whole getting crucified idea. I mean, I don't blame him. It's not a good, fun activity for a Friday afternoon. But if he knew the plan, why now scream out? Why not scream out on Monday, Thursday? What was it that surprised him? What was it that he looked at and said, are you serious? Why have you forsaken me? I think there's a clue in the texts. Now, traditionally, preachers like to go ahead and take this and answer a different question, right? They say, why did Jesus say this? And then they tell you all the things you should have learned. And they're usually right about it, right? Like how God's going to be with you in the darkest of hours, how God never leaves your side, how Jesus was fully human, lots of ways to take it. But none of those really answer the question of why does Jesus, in this moment, say it? Right? Maybe it was altruistically for us, but I don't know. When I worked in anti-money laundering, rule number 1 was excited utterances were usually mostly true, if not fully true. Anyone who works in law enforcement knows that, right? Anyone who's a lawyer knows that, right? Then I got thinking. 2 people died this day, if you notice in the text. Jesus, no kidding, right? We know that. But Judas does too, right? Judas hangs himself. I don't know if you caught that early on as we're reading through Matthew. He's overrun by his own grief at what he had done and what he had seen and what was about to happen. That he dies too. And yet, if you're one of my confirmands, and a few of you are out there, you know where Jesus went when he dies, right? Anyone know where Jesus went when he dies? Guesses? Yeah, B. What? Golgotha's the location, but Jesus dies, buried, resurrected, and in between, do you remember from confirmation? Sorry if you don't. That's all right, none of the adults know this. That's why none of them are helping you right now. Harry does, but that's only because he's ordained. He had 4 years of seminary. He goes to hell. Absolutely, B. He goes to hell. So think about it. He's at that dying moment. He glares forward to see where he's headed, and he realizes 2 things. He's headed to hell, and Judas ain't there. Think of how that would have hit you. The man who betrayed you to be murdered isn't in hell, and you, the Son of God, is staring at the devil. Of course you would say, God, God, why have you forsaken me? Now, some of you are quickly going, what are you talking about, Pastor? What do you mean Jesus went to hell? Well, just so you know, if you read your Apostles' Creed, Nicene Creed, or Athanasian Creed, the 3 creeds of the church, you'll see that Jesus died and he descended to the dead. folks, if he didn't go to heaven and he's already dead on earth, there's only one other choice. We clean it up to be all nice and sanitary about it. If you don't believe me, go look at service book and hymnal back in the good old red book. It says hell there. Go look at our current books, and there's a little asterisk. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, say, or you could translate this as hell. We've been saying that since 300 AD. Not just us, all the other mainline Protestants, Roman Catholicism, so on and so forth. One of the earliest beliefs of the church. Now, some of you might be like, okay, fine, I'll buy the Jesus in hell thing. But Judas in heaven? Come on. He's literally Judas. Like, when someone betrays you, you say, hey, what are you doing, Judas? Right? Here's the thing, though. Judas carries out God's plan for him, doesn't he? Isaiah predicts what Judas is going to do. Without Judas doing what Judas does, crucifixion doesn't occur. We aren't saved, and the devil wins. When Jesus last night was sitting around the table and he says, one of you is going to betray me, and Judas says, oh, surely not me. And he says, the one who just dipped their bread in will. Judas is like, no, come on, it's not going to be me. And Jesus says, it will be worse, it would be better had you not been born than what is going to happen. I don't think he's condemning Judas in that moment. I think in that moment he realizes that two of them are not coming out of Friday alive. And he is pained that his friend Judas is going to fall into such sorrow and fall so far and see no way out of the sorrow and depths of despair that he falls into, that he takes his own life. Now, there might be some of you who say, now, hold on, Pastor. Okay, I'll buy all that. Suicide. Folks, suicide was never considered a sin until medieval Catholicism. The people who wrote this, the people who it was meant to read this, would have looked at it as a tragedy, a horrible thing. Definitely not something you want to have happen. They would have looked at it the way we look at a car accident. You see a car accident in an ambulance, and someone who doesn't make it on the evening news. You don't blame the family. You don't blame the drivers. You just feel compassion for the loss and the tragedy you just saw, right? In the ancient world, that's how suicide was looked at. Frankly, I think the ancient world got that one right. It's a tragedy. We should do what we can to avoid it. We should help anyone who's in struggles, but condemnation? No. I don't think God condemns them either. And then he sees someone in that situation for who they are, a victim. But what does this have to do with us? What can we take away from this? Well, I think what we can take away from it is that there are these moments in time, these moments where it feels like darkness has surrounded us, like we are being swallowed by an abyss of chaos and disorientation. And we are so programmed and so set that when we feel that way, to be ready for doom and hell to come. And yet, when we look at the history of our God, it is in those moments of chaos, in those moments of darkness, in those moments where all the lights go out and nobody knows what's about to happen. Moments of anxiety and fear. That God does God's greatest creations. Think about it. Before anything existed, there was God and there was darkness. And out of that darkness, God made all beautiful things. When darkness hit the earth at noon that day and stayed till 3 that day, when darkness overcame Judas, when darkness overcame the world, when everyone had said to themselves, oh my goodness, we just killed the Son of God, when fear, loathing, and depression overran the world, what was God doing? Defeating death, the devil, and sin. See, when you find yourself in that moment of despair, that moment where all feels lost, where it feels like all that is good is being swallowed up, slowly sifting through your hands like sand you cannot hold. We so often look at that as the destruction of all that is good, rather than the birthing pains of something greater. So as you go out today, take a few minutes in your prayer life today and tomorrow and ask yourself, when is it, where is it that you have felt the most lost? Felt that all that is good is slipping away? That all that you know has been turned upside down? Then ask yourself, could you be misinterpreting destruction when really it's rebirth?